Redline Logbook here for Danmachi Skills Part 6. And we start off with one of Lefiya's skills, Double Cannon. This skill gives Lefiya the ability to hold a magic circle in reserve. What do I mean by that? Well, in the Danmachi universe, you're only able to cast one spell at a time. This can be attack spell, defense spell, healing spell, doesn't matter what it is. That one spell is the only spell you're able to cast. Now, you can hold on to that spell for as long as you want, as long as you control your magic and don't cause yourself Ninja's Fatchus. And then you can release that spell by saying the final keywords of the spell. If you want to cast a different spell, you then have to release the first one and then start casting the second. No matter how powerful a mage you are, that's just the rule. Except for Lefiya, thanks to her skill Double Cannon. With this, she's able to read out any spell she wants, and the magic circle then transfers to her right wrist and will be held there until she wants to use it. In the meantime, she's then able to cast a second spell and pick whichever of the two she wishes to use. Now, most spellcasters would love to have this ability, but it really wouldn't matter for them because most mages can only have 3 spells. Lefiya is different, where she can have infinite spells, because Lefiya has another skill, which I've already talked about in a previous video, where she's able to use other elven spells. And so she has a full range of attack spells, defensive spells, healing spells, support spells, and anti-spells. And so Double Cannon makes her the perfect backline support mage, because she's able to, with her very high intellect, determine what she needs to use at that moment. Does she need to use an attack spell? Does she need to buff her allies? Does she need to raise a shield? Reveria trained her to make these quick snap decisions, but with Double Cannon, she's even more effective. In fact, she's better than Reveria when it comes to this situation, because let's say she has an attack spell in reserve and she's currently chanting a defensive spell. Now, she's doing this because the enemy is on the defense while her allies are on the offense, but if the enemy finds a way to offset the situation where they're able to go on the offensive and her allies go on the defensive, she can then switch to the attack spell, so now she is firing at the enemy, forcing them back on the back foot, and vice versa in any situation that it calls for. And I do not want to underplay just how impressive this is, because once again, every other mage can only cast one spell at a time, and they have to finish casting that spell and then release it before casting a second spell, okay? This is important. This means normally the back line has to have multiple mages to support the front lines. Lefiya, with Double Cannon, can do all the support by herself, as long as it's not one giant army versus one giant army, of course. But once again, most fighting doesn't involve army versus army. We're in the age of the gods, which means we're in the age of quality over quantity. Our second skill is Fairy Senior. This spell increases the user's magic power based on how much sorrow is in their heart. This may seem like a really crappy skill, but this skill belongs to Filvis, which means I'm going to have to explain a little bit about Filvis. So spoilers incoming for Volume 12 of Sororatoria. Filvis is a member of the Dionysus Familia. Their familia was slaughtered by Evilists in one of the most tragic events known as the Massacre of the 27th Floor, where Evilists created a past prey that killed her entire familia, and Filvis also actually died as well. But she was resurrected by a demi-spirit that turned her into a creature, which is a half-mortal, half-monster. Now, Filvis is an elf. Elves have a high standard when it comes to purity and being better than everyone else, and just being noble. And so when you are infused with the body and flesh of a monster, for an elf, this is a worse fate than death. And so disgusted by her very existence, Filvis attempted suicide multiple times. Stabbing, magic, fire, electricity, drowning, decapitation. She tried it all, but every single time, she just regenerated. And whenever she tried to destroy the magic stone, the monster part of her body would automatically protect itself so she wouldn't die. Basically, she was immortal now, permanently stuck as a creature in perpetual torment. Not just that, but she was also a slave to the demi-spirit, where she's basically one of its tendrils. Like all the other special species, like the caterpillars with the blood that's acidic and the man-eating plants, yeah, those are all just extensions of the demi-spirit, which is what Filvis is now. So she isn't even her own person. She's a monster who knows that she's Filvis, who is enslaved to a demi-spirit monster. Now, this is already bad enough, but then it gets worse, because when she finally tells the man she loves the most about the situation, hoping he could help her, Dionysus, that's when she learned that Dionysus was actually an evil psychopath who enjoyed suffering. And when he found out that Filvis was in this horrid, miserable state, absolutely wishing for death, he found it to be the funniest, most entertaining thing he ever saw in his life. A noble elf turned into a monster. He called her the most beautiful creature he'd ever seen because she was the embodiment of suffering, pain, misery, and everything else that made him laugh. And so this caused Filvis to go basically insane, forcing her to develop a new magic, which then literally split her into two people, where all of her pain and sorrow was forced onto another version of herself, the clone, where she didn't have to deal with the emotional repercussions of everything she went through and learned about her god. As a result of this, Filvis became one of the strongest beings in all of Danmachi. So when Filvis splits herself in half, it also splits her power in half as well. But when those two halves merge together, she of course becomes whole. And she's on par with that of a level 7. But she now has to take in all that sorrow, pain, and misery that she actively splitted from herself. And so this skill then activates, which compounds her magic to an insane degree. Filvis, in this form, claims she is now stronger than Revis. And at this point, everyone acknowledges that Revis is stronger than Otter. Now, there are two major caveats to this. One, Filvis didn't know that Revis had the red flesh armor because Revis never uses it until she fights Eyes when Eyes is using Avenger, so she's not stronger than that version of Revis. And two, no one's seen Otter go into beastification in like years, so they actually don't know his full strength. But base Otter and base Revis are both weaker than Filvis. And the majority of this power, I believe, is because of Fairy Senior, because she is only powerful in her magic. Don't get me wrong, she's a level 7, so physically, she kicked Bet's ass easily. But after Bet received a level boost from Haruhime and became a level 7, he was then physically stronger than her. But when Filvis realized he was getting a level boost, she then started using her magic again and was able to force Bet back, even in his level 7 state. So when it comes to pure magic power, because of the abundance of sorrow, pain, and misery that's just inside of her, that drove her literally insane to the point where she split herself into two personalities, this made her the strongest mage in all of Danmachi that we know of, excluding Lefiya. But Lefiya is just an entirely different breed, so she doesn't count. Okay, and the next two skills belong to Filvis. The first one is Monster Union. It's an odd skill because technically it's not a skill. It's literally her fauna accepting the fact that she's now half monster. That's literally all it does, is just saying, okay, well, I have to rewrite your code so this way this body makes sense now. It's basically the fauna saying this is now a new species, a creature. That's literally the entire skill. It's just the god's blood, the fauna accepting that Filvis is now something new. Her second skill is a lot more interesting. It's Dark Light. Now, anytime a mage casts a magic spell, the magic circle appears below their feet, and each magic circle is different color depending on who the mage is. For Filvis, hers is pure white. But at any point, she could choose to activate this skill, and this skill turns her magic circle black. And any magic that is produced from this skill is also turned black. So she has a pure white shield as part of her spell. It turns into a black shield. She has white lightning. It transforms into black lightning. And this is important because whenever she activates this skill, it adds anti-healing magic to the spell. So if you get hit by her lightning, and if it doesn't kill you, she's level 7, you're probably going to die anyway, because now healing magic doesn't work on you. You have to wait until her magic wears off before you can be healed. And yes, even potions don't work. This is one of the reasons why after Bet got his ass kicked by her, they weren't able to just immediately throw a magic potion on him to wake him up. They had to wait for him to regain consciousness on his own because, well, he was now covered in anti-healing magic. And the best part about this spell is that it has no effect on Filvis. Normally, when you have a magic spell or a magic item that has a debuff skill on your opponent or causes some kind of curse, it causes negative effects to you. Either you go down a level or it slowly eats away at your stamina. That's normally how it goes, but not this skill. Dark Light is only positive for Filvis. And I think I'm going to end here talking about these two elven friends. And so, if you enjoy this video, subscribe, give it a thumbs up so you enjoy more Danmachi and other things. Thank you, and have a great day.